Hey everyone, welcome to Story Time. It's me, Josh. Today we're going to be reading Mr. Funny by Roger Hargreaves from the Mr. Men Library. We will be getting to all the Little Miss stories as well, so stick around. If you like reading these, please subscribe, click the bell below, then you can visit the page and read these stories whenever you like. Alright, I hope you're comfortable and ready, because we're about to delve into Story Time. Mr. Funny lived in a teapot. It had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room, and it suited Mr. Funny very nicely. This is teapot there, little teapot house. One day Mr. Funny was having lunch, but he wasn't very hungry, so he only had a daisy sandwich and a glass of toast. Delicious, he murmured to himself as he finished his funny lunch. You ever had a glass of toast before? Or a daisy sandwich, as in daisies, the flowers. This is going to be fun, do you think? Do you think it might be funny? Because it's about Mr. Funny? Yeah. After lunch, Mr. Funny decided to go for a drive in his car. Mr. Funny's car was a shoe. Have you ever seen a car that looks like a shoe? It looks very funny. There he goes. It's even got laces and everything. A little shoe car. Wouldn't that be fun? As he drove along, everybody who saw him laughed to see such a funny sight. He passed a worm at the side of the road. Worm's laughing here. Ha ha ha. The worm thought Mr. Funny in his funny car was the funniest thing he had ever seen. He nearly laughed himself in two. He passed a pig in a field. The pig thought Mr. Funny in his funny car was the funniest thing she had ever seen. She nearly laughed her tail off. Having a good laugh there at the shoe car. Oh, here we go. Flowers laughing here. Even the flowers he passed thought that Mr. Funny was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. They nearly laughed themselves out of the ground. Look at all the flowers laughing there. Are you laughing back there too? Laughing at some of the funny stuff Mr. Funny's doing already? Yeah? Eventually Mr. Funny came to some crossroads. He didn't know which way to go, so he looked at the signpost. One of the signs said, "To the zoo." That'll be fun, thought Mr. Funny to himself. So he drove his shoe towards the zoo. There he goes. He's in his little shoe there at the bottom, going to the zoo. That way. When he arrived at the gate of the zoo, he stopped. It was closed. "I'm sorry," said the zookeeper. "We've had to close the zoo because all the animals have colds, and they're all feeling very sorry for themselves." "Oh dear," said Mr. Funny, and then he thought, "Perhaps I can help to cheer them up," he said. "Well," said the zookeeper, "it's worth a try." And he opened the gate. There he goes. Zookeeper there, keeping stuff in check. Mr. Funny drove into the zoo in his shoe. The first thing he saw was an elephant. It was true. The elephant was feeling very sorry for herself. Very sorry indeed. Mr. Funny stood and looked at the sad-looking elephant, and the sad-looking elephant stood and looked at Mr. Funny. Oh dear. Elephant doesn't look super happy there. Mr. Funny standing in front of the elephant, looking all funny. Flower in his hat, his little clown-like shoes, his gloves, his big top hat. Funny looking. Then do you know what Mr. Funny did? He pulled a funny face. Mr. Funny, as you'd imagine, is very good at pulling funny faces. The elephant giggled. She'd never seen anything so funny. Mr. Funny pulled another funny face. The elephant burst out laughing. Look at that. Got some wobbly lips happening or something there. He's making a funny face. I'm sure he's really good at that. Can you give me your best funny face? Oh, we got some goodies going there. Ready? I'll the best I could do to think of maybe Mr. Funny. With that funny face. Hey. There we go. There's plenty more funny faces to be made. They're always fun. Funny faces are always great. If you're there with people, watching with brothers, sisters, family, friends, or anything like that, show each other your funny faces. Yeah. Always good to have a laugh. The elephant laughed and laughed and laughed. She laughed so hard she nearly laughed her trunk off. And she felt a lot better. Mr. Funny went over to the lion house. Ooh, and make a lion laugh. There was a lion feeling extraordinarily sorry for himself. Mr. Funny stood and looked at the sad-looking lion. And the sad-looking lion stood and looked at Mr. Funny. Oh dear. It's the lion. A little bit of a frown. And then Mr. Funny pulled the funniest looking face that's probably ever been pulled anywhere. Now, you've heard a lion roar before, haven't you? Well, this lion roared too, with laughter. He laughed so hard, he nearly laughed his whiskers to pieces. Mr. Funny pulling a funny face there. Then Mr. Funny went around to see all the other animals in the zoo. Oh dear, what a miserable looking lot. For all of them, Mr. Funny pulled funnier and funnier faces. The big brown bear giggled and then burst out laughing. Nice. And the giraffe laughed so hard she nearly laughed her neck into a knot. The hippopotamus nearly laughed himself out of his skin. The penguins nearly laughed their flippers floppy. And the leopard, well, you really should have seen him. He laughed so hard he nearly laughed his spots off. What pandemonium. The giraffe laughing now. Oh, Mr. Funny, giggled the zookeeper, who had started laughing as well. Oh, Mr. Funny, thank you very, very much indeed for coming to cheer us all up. Oh, it was nothing really, replied Mr. Funny, modestly, and drove off in his shoe. Mr. Funny there, cruising in his shoe. Later, when Mr. Funny arrived home, he chuckled to himself. Well, he said, that's the end of another funny day. And he parked his shoe and went inside his teapot, and because he was feeling thirsty, he made himself a nice hot cup of cake. Well, that was funny. I hope you enjoyed Mr. Funny today and had a little laugh back there. Thank you so much for reading these stories with me. It's always great. I love reading books. Please subscribe, click the bell below, and you can visit these and read stories on the page whenever you like. I'll be back again really soon with another story. Don't you worry. Bye for now. Not forever.